And Marshall Chriswell is on the line with us this morning, and information on this segment should not be taken as legal advice. Laws can vary by jurisdiction and circumstance, and you should consult with a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction, and Marshall Chriswell certainly is one of those. And so it's good to have you with us here this morning. You know, we get these all the time, these agreements, service agreements, whether they're for phones or for cable service or things like that. But there are other types of things that we sign them without even looking because we just don't want to read them, Marshall. That's probably not the best advice, though, is it?
It is not. As you might imagine, I recommend reading things and understanding things before you sign them. And sometimes, depending on the type of document you're signing, a layperson may be able to read and get a general understanding of what they're signing, and you should do that. And if there are things there that are important to you that you don't understand, that's when you may need to seek a legal professional to help you with that.
All right. Well, let's talk about what some of those are. Now, I just mentioned things like phone contracts and cable agreements, and those are usually standardized things, but we should definitely know what we're getting into there. But I really want to boil it down to something maybe a little more local. What are some of the documents that we sign every day without even thinking about it that maybe we ought to step back a second?
Things that people sign regularly, right? How about a lease agreement? Renting a home, renting an apartment. I think people spend a lot of time looking for the right place to live. How many bedrooms and bathrooms, and where's it located, and does it have some outside space, and all kinds of things that make it the right fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to the day that you meet with the landlord and they present you with the lease, so many people maybe you look at how long the lease is for. It's a year lease, or it's a month-to-month lease, or whatever it is. But very few people are going to take a look at that entire document. And then when something goes wrong, that's when they're going to try to find it first, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Somebody calls and says, "Hey, I'm having an issue with my landlord," or what does this mean? And I say, "Well, I have to read the lease. They're not just standard documents, right? Everyone is a little bit different."
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, first of all, say, "I have no idea where that thing is." And from landlord and tenant perspective, unfortunately. Find it, and then we've got to go over it and read it. But by then, I think very few people understand that the legal power that signing a document like that has, signing a contract has. I mean, those you are agreeing to those terms, and so when thinking about those agreements, all kinds of things in there that can affect you, from obvious things like, can I have pets, and who takes care of the maintenance at the property. So many people think, well, it's the landlord's property, they're going to take care of it. Well, the lease might say something different in terms of maintenance and repairs. So all kinds of things in there that you're going to want to know before you sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people will do sort of homemade documents, something they make up on their computer. Some people might download something off the internet, and even the person who has done that to sign an agreement with somebody, they don't even know what's in it. So when both sides aren't sure what something means, then there can come some real entanglements, and certainly you need an attorney to help you figure that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not always, we think of the consumer, right, that sometimes doesn't read things, or doesn't, or maybe gets taken advantage of, or is not as sophisticated as the business owner, the property owner, the person asking them to sign the agreement. But it's from both sides, and as you rightly pointed out, the prevalence of online forms and things like that, or my uncle rents out apartments. I bought a building. I want to rent it out. I'm going to use his form, and I never even look at it because it seems like it's worked for him all these years. These kinds of things, and so it's both sides. So sometimes the person presenting the document doesn't even know what the heck it says.
Yeah, that's a big problem. What about when you're purchasing a property and there's an HOA involved?
Sure, absolutely. So purchase and sale agreements for real estate are complicated documents that you really want to understand. And whenever and part of that is that when you purchase a property, right, you're also taking you're taking title to this property subject to all of the different restrictions and conditions that can be out there, and certainly planned communities, condo associations, HOAs, those types of things, or general restrictions and conditions within the deed, even if there's not an organization there to enforce them. All of those things are very, very important to understand before you sign the agreement to purchase, right? So I think that's a misconception, is that somebody signs a sales agreement to buy a house, and they think, well, I've got 60 days until we have to close, or 90 days, or whatever. If I decide this isn't for me, if I come across something that I don't like, I can just back out of this and walk away. Well, you've got to look at your agreement carefully, because there are going to be contingencies in that agreement that say these are the reasons that you may walk away, right? Maybe it has an inspection contingency where you can have the home inspected and the water and sewer lines inspected, or get a radon test, or whatever it may be. And that might be a reason to back out if it comes back with some sort of a defect that you're not willing to accept, or the seller's not willing to fix. But there are other things, like a homeowners association or restrictive covenants that you want to know about beforehand, because there's usually not an exception for that, right? So if I purchase a property and I say, well, or if I sign a contract to buy a piece of land, and I say, well, I'm not only going to live here, but I'm going to operate my, I'm self-employed and I have a business. I'm going to operate a little retail shop here out of the garage on the property. And then, you buy the place, or you get under contract to buy it, and lo and behold, just before closing, somebody, your attorney probably, that's doing your title search, points out that, hey, you're in a planned community here where you're not allowed to have any commercial activity whatsoever. And then all your best laid plans are out the window, and you try to back out, and you're not able to without some sort of penalty.
Yeah, and I was thinking of something like somebody buys a home somewhere, and it's a planned community just like that. They haven't read down through the document. They don't see that there's strictures against building a fence. I want to build a fence around my house. I think it would look really nice. My homeowners association, it turns out, if I read down through, my homeowners association says no fences.
Yep, no fences, or a limitation in the height of the fence, or the setbacks and setback provisions that aren't going to work for you. Absolutely. So you really got to understand those things before you get into it, because if you just get excited and get get out in front of yourself and say, all right, oh yes, this is the perfect place. Let me sign right here. Click, and a lot of times now it's DocuSign, an online digital signature, where it really inhibits people from reading those. You get a contract of such gravity and importance as purchasing a home or whatever it may be, and you're trying to read it on a little smartphone and click through and sign, and people aren't actually looking at the terms. So, but yeah, absolutely, you need to understand those things up front.
Are there other types of things we might sign without reading down through that could come back and bite us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Employment contracts is another one. Particularly if you're a professional, and you have an employment contract, somebody presents you with, and you're excited, right? You're getting a new job. Maybe it's your first job. And the salary looks nice, and they present you with a contract to sign. That's good for you, right? You say, okay, well, I'm locked in. I've got this job for at least a year or 3 years or whatever the contract is for. But there are so many pitfalls in those agreements, and one in particular is non-compete clauses. I see employment agreements all the time that have non-compete covenants within them, meaning that if you leave that job, then you are not permitted to be employed or practice your profession within a certain geographical range or within a certain time duration of when you left your employer. And that's something that gets a lot of people. They come back and say, "Wow, I didn't realize that I wasn't going to be able to go and be employed somewhere here close by my home for a period of 3 years after I've left my old job." So that's something to really look out for.
Recognizing that there can be very particular circumstances with anything that you sign, is it easy to extract yourself from some sort of agreement that you have signed without having read down through it to see what those restrictions might be?
Once you have signed a contract, generally you are bound by those terms. Unless the contract provides for an early termination, some provision that's going to allow you to essentially default or terminate the deal, it will. But that's not always the case. So it's so important, like I said, the legal force of your signature, whether it's pen on paper or clicking a mouse or hitting the screen, it's really important to understand what you're signing.
Absolutely. All right. So somebody wants to get involved in some sort of entanglement, as I called it earlier, or some sort of deal. What should they do first, and what attorney should they call?
Yeah, so absolutely I'm willing to help with those issues. You can call my office at 724-465-5826. Stop and see us in the old R&P building here on Church Street in Indiana, or go online. Check us out at www.westernpalawyer.com.
He is Marshall Chriswell. Thanks so much for the visit this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd. Have a great week.
You too.